You don't want the attention to go on the chart. You want the attention to be going on the information. Hi guys, and welcome to another video on MentorMe's YouTube channel. My name is Anil Anandan. I'm a CFA chart holder, and today we'll be discussing about powerful way of creating communications using Excel charts, which of course a lot of people have underrated because a lot of people know how to make charts, but don't really know how to communicate, right? So and more so because just knowing the art of making charts is not enough. It's very important that which charts to use. You should know which charts to use, which charts not to use, when it's probably not even recommended to use charts. So all of that we're going to be covering in this video. Let's get started. So the first angle that I want to be discussing is the three rules of communication in case of any presentations you're using, or possibly if you're using Excel. What is the first thing to remember is, first of all, who is your audience? What exactly do you want to communicate, right? So if the audience is an educated audience that you are making your presentation or making your charts for, then your presentation and then your charts can be more detailed. It can have such information which will be relevant to them. What needs to be communicated is a place where a lot of people will get their concept wrong, because they don't really know what exactly do they want to communicate from the chart. So a lot of time has to be spent on what needs to be communicated. That has to be answered in crisp and clear understanding, right? Only then can you actually decide on how to communicate, right? Now, how to communicate means what kind of chart is more relevant. So the first and the last part of course, is, pretty easy to decide, but the middle part, which is what needs to be communicated, is the critical part, right? So you should spend time looking at your data and trying to ask yourself what one information is that I want my audience of this chart to understand, right? So let's get started with some ways of dealing with the third part, which is how, and who is what obviously you have to answer yourself, right? So whenever you're looking at chart selection, a very simple framework is what I've shown out here, is to understand first whether your data is actually comparing something, or whether you are just showing data. You just want to show the scale of the data. You want to maybe show some relationship between data. So if this is clear, right, if it's relationship, then there's a certain chart which you can use. If you're showing categories, then there's a certain chart which you can use. And if you're just showing let's say categorical division of data across time, then there is a different chart to it, right? So I've given some names out here. So if you are looking at numerical data, and this huge amount of data, let's say you're talking about stock market performance in terms of percentage for daily fluctuation, then of course that's a lot of data to look at right now. So you can't really say that this will be done within 8 bars. So in that cases, of course, histogram will make sense, right? If you're comparing it, right, if you're comparing two sets of data, then of course the bar chart is helpful. And line charts again are useful when there is large amount of data, but then again you want to see it across time, right? Now, of course, these things need to be shown to you for you to understand, rather than just me keep on talking, right? So let's get to some practical aspect of it, and also at the same time I will show what this chart should look like, right, along with the Excel sheet. So you are free to download the Excel template which I've given in the description, and you can try to practice it with me, right? So let's get started. First is the three variations of bar chart. Is it's a beautiful chart which is available in Excel, and mostly candidates really don't know when to use and why these charts exist, right? So there's a stacked chart in which you can see that the single bar itself consists of multiple information, right? So you've got large cap, mid cap, and small cap stocks, and this is the data that I am looking at right now, right? Then you've got clustered bar. So clustered means obviously groups, right? So out here you can see we've used groups of different kinds of companies in different sectors and across time, right? So category in time is what is the place where you use clustered bar chart, right? Let's look at the bar chart variation, which talks about using the bar chart with line. Right now, the beauty of this chart is that you are able to use three data points at the same time. So you're looking at out here, if you look at this data, you got one as the time, second as the fluctuations of the performance of the hedge fund that we're looking at, and then value of the money which is invested across time. Now you need to understand that money and the fluctuation are in different scales, right? Hence, Excel has a functionality of secondary accesses. So this is where the bar chart variation works, right? Now let me show you how to make this. Instead of just keep on talking to you. So let's look at some data point out here now, and I'm using pretty simple data points. You are free to complicate things later on. Now, a simple stacked bar chart could be made in this way. So you could just name this as time or date or year, whatever, right? Now, first I'm just using sales and profits, right? So what we'll try to do is we'll try to create a stacked column, right? Because remember that we could obviously, use these kind of charts as well, but you can see that is not really looking very good because the scale of sales and profits are very different, right? So what we will do instead is, hold on a second, let me use insert and let's select. Now if you just look at clustered column, it's not looking very nice because it looks as if the profit is too less, right? So the easier way to do is to use the stacked column, right? Now this is how a stacked column looks like, right? There you go. So that's your time, right? So now you can see, of course, you can modify this a little bit, remove the grid lines, and if you want, you can also put the labels out here. So data labels, there you go. Right. Now let's look at the clustered column is what I showed you, right? So the clustered column is different kind of data for this, right? So you can't really use it for you need clusters at the end of the day, right? So we could use clusters also, let's say in this kind of data wherein we have sector, we have different kinds of companies, right? So we could insert, right, all charts, and we could use a clustered column, right? There you go. So of course, in this data, obviously I would never recommend to make a clustered column, but I'm just showing you how to make a clustered column. Most likely it is useful when you're showing it across time. So if you have 2006, 2007, 2008, then you could make clusters across industries, right? Now let's look at the bar chart with lines. So similar to how we made it, but just a little bit of trick out here in changing the axes. So let's first make the simple clustered stacked column, right? So same data, but now you can see that the profit percentage which I wanted to show is pretty small. That's the reason why we can't even see that in this data point. It's there, but you can't really see it because it's too small in this scale to understand, right? So what we can do is we can just select change series chart type, and on the profit percentage, let's just select secondary axis. Right now, of course, this doesn't make sense. So what we'll do is for the profit percentage, we'll select the line graph, right? So there you go. That's how you make the bar chart with a line, right? So pretty straightforward. Always remove the grid lines whenever you're making the chart, right? And make sure that if you are using data labels, make sure that those data labels are not too many so as to confuse. And also you can add the variations of the data labels, whether you want it inside, outside, based on the appearance, right? So that call has to be taken based on the appearance, right? I will not get into that beautification at the moment, but this is how you make the bar chart with the line variation. So let's look at pie chart, right? Now pie chart, you have to understand that you do not use in all the scenarios just because it looks like a pie, right? So you have to make sure that whenever you are trying to show a market share or a proportion, that is where a pie chart can be useful. And also in that proportion, you should have at least 2 or 3 major players which show a certain dominance in that pie. so that that communication can be there. So in this case, if you see this chart of the economic times of market share of automobiles company, it's very easy to understand whenever you look at the chart, right? Okay, that Maruti, Hyundai, and M&M are the major players in this market, with Kia as the one who is gaining the market share, right? So you don't want too many smaller slices in that chart. It really doesn't communicate very well, right? In fact, it will be very strenuous to the person to even understand what exactly you want to communicate. Okay, a cone chart is just a variation of a normal chart. So I'll quickly show you how to make the cone chart. It's nothing fancy. If I just make the same chart of column, but instead what we will do is we will use a 3D column chart. Okay, so if you go to the clustered column side, you'll see that you get the 3D options out here, right? So let's say we use this. That's okay. Now the trick is only to change the shape. That's all that is actually changing. So uh, just right click on the format data series, and you will find that the column shape is available, right? So you got multiple kinds of shapes that you can put into: partial cone, full pyramid, partial pyramid. So that's how you make a cone chart. It's nothing fancy. It might just be used sometimes to break the monotony, because if you're showing too many charts and if you're just showing bar after bar, it might just become a little more boring, and in that sense. So that sometimes you can just increase the shape or change the shape sizes just to change things a little bit. Look at the next chart, which is tornado chart. Now this can be a little tricky to make at first, but once you get a hang of it, it's pretty easy to make. First of all, you need to understand that tornado chart is used for comparison, right? So you need to have comparative data. You can't just make tornado chart when you're just looking at one kind of data sets, right? So out here, if you can see, what I'm trying to compare is this is the actual target on the left hand side, and this is what we completed, right? So there is a comparison, right? In the same way, you could use it for let's say you are showing 2019 versus 2020. Maybe you're trying to show valuation summaries, wherein you are showing, using DCF valuation, this is what you got; using PE valuation, this is what you got. So anywhere there is any summaries to be provided, tornado charts can be pretty interesting to see and very easily communicable, right? So let's take some data and try and figure out whether we can actually make that or not. In the meanwhile, yeah. So there you go. So if you see, I've got some data points here in which I've got 2 years, 2016, 2017, and we've got the gross margins of companies, right? Now, in this case, what we can do is, what I'll do is I'll just copy this to a different sheet. Right, so it's easy to understand. Again, it's not very complicated. It's pretty simple. Once you get a hang of it, this should be child's play. So you've got 2016 and you've got 2017 in 2 years when you want to compare. And always remember the scale of the data out here. We're talking about percentage, so it will vary between 0 and 1. And these are the sectors, right? So the first step is to actually select the data. And if possible, what you could do is just put on the filter and arrange it from any other, whether it's ascending, descending, doesn't matter, but it will just appear a little more consistent, right? So arrange it, sort it out in a certain way, whether it's ascending or descending, doesn't matter. Go to recommended charts, all charts, and then go to the bar charts, which is the sidebar charts, and select the stacked bar. Okay, this is the stacked bar, not the 100% stacked bar, just the stacked bar. Press OK, right? So this is the first step, okay, in creating the tornado chart. Right now, what we want to do is we want to bifurcate this into two different sections, right? So that the left side will either appear as 2016, the right side will appear as 2017. So the first thing is, the first variable will just right click, okay, and we'll go to format data series and put into secondary axis first of all, okay. Second, what we will do is we will go to the secondary axis again, format the axis, and put the maximum and the minimum value. So if you see, the percentage obviously fluctuate between 0 and 1. So similarly, or what we could do is just put -1 to 1 will also do, right? However you want to present it, right? And then select on values in reverse order, right? So somehow it is taking some structure out here. Now, similar thing, what we'll do is we will go to the primary axis, format the axis, and put it as the same scale, -1 to +1. So now you can see there is a good bifurcation between both the sides, right? Now, finally, you just want to get rid of that labels out here, right? So just click on that label slightly and go to labels out here on the right and put it as low. Okay, so it's now come to the other side, right? Now you have a clear distinction between both the sides. Now what you could do also is put, if you would like to put still labels, you could put labels and put them under the center, okay, or inside and whatever suits you best, right? This will also do. And finally, you want to delete the primary axis, right? There you go. So your primary axis is deleted because it will just be repetitive, right? So that's how you create a tornado chart. A clear comparison. It's a beautiful chart, and it's very easy to compare. Now the communication out here that we're trying to do is, okay, in 2016 these are the margins, and in 2017 these are the margins, right? So this is how you create a tornado chart. So these are just bits and pieces of the skill, but the important thing to remember is when to use a chart. It's not always recommended to just show off your skills, but it should have some meaning out here. Now we clearly used it for a good comparison, and it's easy to compare, right? Of course, if I were to show a variation of the same chart, we could have also made a column chart. But if I'll just show it to you, whichever suits better is the question, right? So if let's say I had made a normal stacked column chart, or let's say this chart, right? It's a little difficult to compare, right? Because you can't really say which side is bigger, whether 2016 is bigger or 2017 is bigger. And if you were to say that we had made a normal clustered column chart, let's say we made the clustered, yeah. So let's say we made this chart. It's still, if you were to compare these two, in my honest opinion, right? The size of the margins are easily understood in the right side, and you clearly can understand that, okay, if you were to see 2017, 2018, the more consistent industry has been utilities, information technology, versus out here it's a little difficult because horizontally it's a little difficult to understand, right? So that's how tornado chart is made. And finally, I'll discuss some best practices that you should follow every time you're making chart. And this might just sound like repetition, but never use charts when it's not required. Sometimes it's just okay to use a smaller Excel table, right? Because it will communicate the data fast. Because it happens sometimes that when we are creating presentations, since we can make charts and we can put a little bit of colors, we tend to overuse it unnecessarily, which just complicates things a little difficult. And you might in the process just probably not be able to communicate the what information you want to exactly communicate, right? Also, the other thing to remember is, as for the industry that you are working on, you should be aware of the color, the soberness of the color. You don't want to use too much color. Also, if you are working for a company, be aware of the color code which the company uses, and just stick to those 2 to 3 colors, at the max. The point of these two best practices that I'm saying is because you don't want the attention to go on the chart. You want the attention to be going on the information. So if there is too much loudness in the color and in the fanciness of the chart, then the focus will go towards your creativity, which is what you don't want, right? Always get feedback from your colleagues. Like whenever you make any charts or make presentation, make sure to just even if you're not able to critique your charts and your presentations, always try to show it to a third person who might be able to give you some feedback, a very valuable feedback, which might save you some embarrassment in the meeting, right? And never forget the 3 rules of communication, which is who you're communicating, what you want to communicate, and how do you want to communicate. If you follow these practices, trust me, there is no other presentation that you will give which will not be appreciated and in which you will not be applauded, right? So I hope you appreciated this video. I hope you like this video. I hope it helped. And if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, and I will again see you next week with another tutorial. Bye.